Let's be brutally honest. You're probably a lazy, distracted, dopamine-addicted mess. Your attention span has been murdered by an endless stream of notifications, cheap dopamine hits from social media, and the soul-sucking vortex of urgent but meaningless tasks. You check your phone while watching Netflix, scroll through Twitter mid-conversation, and pretend to work while clicking through 10 different tabs, half of them memes. And then, you wonder why your life isn't moving forward. Meanwhile, some people, real killers in their fields, are out here dominating. They're writing bestsellers, launching startups, creating real impact, and leaving you in the dust. Do you think they got there by mindlessly scrolling TikTok for 3 hours a day? No. They mastered the lost art of focus. They built mental fortresses around their time and energy. They go deep, while you stay stuck in the shallow end. It's time to fix that. Welcome to Deep Work by Cal Newport. This book is your wake-up call, your slap in the face, your invitation to stop being a distracted little amateur and start becoming a serious player. It's not a self-help fluff piece that tells you to just believe in yourself or manifest success. No, it's about turning your brain into a high-performance machine, one that actually gets shit done in a world designed to keep you distracted. If you're still with me, congratulations, you've got at least some self-awareness left. Now let's introduce the mind behind this masterpiece. Introduction. Meet Cal Newport, the man who actually gets it. Cal Newport is not your average productivity guru. He's not here to sell you a course, convince you to optimize your morning routine with Himalayan sea salt baths, or preach hustle culture BS. No. Cal is a computer science professor at Georgetown University, a best-selling author, and one of the few people who has managed to crack the code of success without being a slave to shallow distractions. Unlike the LinkedIn influencers who pretend to work while tweeting motivational quotes, Cal actually lives what he preaches. He's published academic papers, written multiple books, and built a powerhouse career, all while never touching social media, keeping strict work boundaries, and mastering the rare ability to focus deeply on hard problems. And that's exactly what this book is about. The insanely underrated, career-changing, life-elevating power of deep work. Deep work is not some fancy concept. It's the secret weapon of the most successful people in history. It's what separates the legends from the mediocrities, the productive geniuses from the overwhelmed amateurs. It's the ability to dive into a task so deeply, so completely, that you produce work of such high quality and originality that no one can ignore you. But let's be clear, deep work isn't easy. It's not sexy. It doesn't come with instant gratification. It's hard, uncomfortable, and mentally exhausting, which is why 99% of people never develop it. Instead, they take the easy road, multitasking, endlessly checking notifications, filling their days with shallow busy work while producing absolutely nothing of value. And that, my dear listener, is why most people stay mediocre. So, do you want to keep being just another cog in the machine? Another easily replaceable knowledge worker drowning in emails and pointless meetings? Or do you want to develop the ability to focus so powerfully that you become irreplaceable? If it's the latter, buckle up. Because in the next chapters, we're going to destroy your shallow work habits, break down the principles of deep work, and teach you how to actually build a legendary, distraction-free career. Are you ready? Or are you too weak to handle it? Book introduction. Why you're drowning in mediocrity and don't even know it. Let's get something straight. You are not doing real work. You think you are. You convince yourself that you're grinding. You pat yourself on the back for sending 42 emails before lunch. You feel accomplished when you tick off 10 minor tasks on your to-do list. You sit through meetings that could have been emails, then answer emails that shouldn't even exist. But deep down, you know the truth. You're playing office instead of actually producing anything valuable. You are drowning in shallow work, that low value, low concentration, easily replicable nonsense that makes you feel busy but gets you nowhere. It's the reason you never finish that book you want to write. It's why your big ideas never actually happen. It's why you're stuck in the middle of the pack, easily replaceable, completely forgettable. Meanwhile, the people who actually matter in this world, the ones shaping industries, writing history-making books, building billion-dollar companies, are doing something different. They are working deeply. Cal Newport is about to drop a reality check so hard it might reboot your entire brain. This book isn't some feel-good, motivational, just follow your passion nonsense. It's a blueprint for getting your focus back, cutting the distractions, and producing work so insanely valuable that you can't be ignored. Still here? Good. Let's talk about Carl Jung, a man who, unlike you, understood how to do serious work. Jung wasn't just another psychologist. He was the psychologist, one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. But here's the thing. He didn't build his groundbreaking theories on interruptions, notifications, or quick Zoom calls. He didn't brainstorm while half-scrolling Twitter. No, when Jung wanted to redefine psychology, he fled to a stone tower in the Swiss countryside, cut himself off from distractions, and locked in. In that tower, Jung went deep. He wrote, he thought, he produced ideas that changed the way we understand the human mind. And what was everyone else doing? Chasing shallow work, keeping up with meaningless professional obligations, and producing nothing memorable. Jung wasn't alone. Mark Twain wrote much of Tom Sawyer in a shed away from his home. Bill Gates took Think Weeks, where he locked himself away just to focus on one big idea at a time. J.K. Rowling, when finishing Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, disappeared into a hotel for weeks just to focus. Do you see the pattern? Deep work isn't optional. It's not some quirky habit of historical geniuses. It's the only way to do anything that actually matters. But guess what? You've forgotten how to do it. You live in a world that is actively, aggressively designed to make deep work impossible. Social media, emails, Slack notifications, urgent messages, and that little dopamine rush every time you see a new like or comment. You're addicted to distractions, and it's making you dumber, slower, and more replaceable by the second. This book is your intervention. Newport introduces two key concepts that you need to drill into your brain right now. The first concept is deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. This is where the real money, the real breakthroughs, and the real impact come from. The second concept is shallow work, anything that's logistical, low effort, easy to replicate, and ultimately meaningless. Meetings, emails, staying updated on LinkedIn. This is the black hole sucking your productivity dry. Here's the real kicker. Most people today don't even have the ability to do deep work anymore. Their brains are so fried from years of digital distractions that they couldn't concentrate for 30 minutes if their life depended on it. And if you think you're the exception, ask yourself this. When was the last time you worked for 2 straight hours without checking your phone, email, or notifications? When was the last time you did something so mentally intense that it left you feeling exhausted but fulfilled? Can you even sit alone with your thoughts for 15 minutes without instinctively reaching for your phone? If those questions made you uncomfortable, good. You should be uncomfortable, because the world is punishing you for your inability to focus. Let's talk money for a second. In today's economy, there are 2 types of people: the deep workers, the elite performers who produce at an insanely high level. These people are irreplaceable, and they get paid accordingly. The distracted masses, the shallow thinkers who live in their inbox, jump from task to task, and confuse busyness with productivity. These people are easily replaced by AI, by outsourcing, or by someone who actually knows how to focus. Which one do you think is going to thrive? In an age where technology is rapidly replacing mediocre workers, Newport makes one thing painfully clear. If you can't focus, if you can't work deeply, you will lose. But here's the good news. Deep work is a skill, and like any skill, you can train it. That's what this book is about. It's not just an argument for why deep work matters, it's a battle plan for getting it back. This book is split into 2 parts. Part 1, why deep work is valuable, rare, and meaningful. Spoiler, because most people are too distracted to do it. Part 2, the rules you need to follow to rebuild your focus, cut the crap, and actually start producing high-quality work. This book is not here to hold your hand. It is not here to make you feel good. It is here to tell you the truth. You are wasting your potential. But if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to disconnect, train your brain, and master deep work, You can achieve more in months than most people achieve in years. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to keep wasting your days in the shallow swamp of meaningless work? Or are you ready to build a mind so sharp, so powerful that you become unstoppable? If you're actually serious about doing something great, this book is your blueprint. If not, go check your notifications. You probably have another completely useless email waiting for you. Welcome to Deep Work. It's time to get serious. Chapter 1. Deep work is valuable. Let's get something straight right now. You are not special. You are not some rare genius whose scattered, distracted work habits are just part of your creative process. You are not thriving in chaos. You are not multitasking like a pro. You are drowning in mediocrity, and the worst part is, you don't even see it. If you are like most people, you are spending your days chained to a digital pacifier, clicking from email to email, Slack message to Slack message, telling yourself that you're working while actually producing nothing of real value. You jump from one shallow, pointless task to another, wondering why your career is stagnating, why your creative projects never get finished, why your business is stuck in neutral, why you never seem to have enough time despite being so busy. Meanwhile, the people who actually run the world, the ones launching billion-dollar companies, writing groundbreaking books, revolutionizing industries, they don't work like you. They know that in today's economy, the ability to do deep work is the ultimate competitive advantage. The world is now brutally divided into two types of workers. The distracted masses, the people who spend 60% of their work week on emails and Slack, who refresh their social media 100 times a day, who can't sit alone with their thoughts for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. The deep workers, the people who have the rare ability to sit down, focus intensely, and produce high-quality, high-impact work at a level that no one else can match. Guess which group is getting paid more? Guess which group is recession-proof? Guess which group is actually shaping the future? If you don't master deep work, you are going to be left behind. And this isn't just some motivational pep talk. This is the brutal economic reality of the 21st century. Let's talk about Nate Silver, the data genius who became famous for accurately predicting the outcome of US elections. In 2012, when most people were refreshing CNN and reading opinion polls, Nate Silver was using complex data models to cut through the noise and make actual high-value predictions. By the time the dust settled, his blog was getting 70% of the New York Times total traffic from one guy's work. That's the power of deep work. Or take David Heinemeier Hansson, the programmer who built Ruby on Rails, a web development framework used by Twitter, Hulu, and Shopify. Hansson didn't get where he is by sitting in endless meetings, responding to every email in 5 minutes, or staying plugged in 24/7. He focused. He built something insanely valuable. Now, he can afford to live in Spain, race high-performance cars, and work on projects that actually interest him. If you're still skeptical, let's bring in some hard economic facts. MIT economists Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee have spent years studying how technology is killing jobs and creating massive inequality. Their research shows that low-skill, easily replaceable workers are being automated out of existence, while the few people who can master hard, high-value cognitive tasks are thriving. In other words, if your job can be automated, it will be. If your work can be outsourced, it will be. If you are just another warm body in a sea of distracted knowledge workers, you will be replaced. On the flip side, if you can develop the ability to focus deeply and master complex skills, you will become part of a small elite class of irreplaceable workers. This isn't some distant future scenario. It's happening right now. Think about AI. 10 years ago, artificial intelligence was just a sci-fi concept. Now, AI can write articles, diagnose diseases, analyze financial markets, and even create art. It's eating up low-value, repetitive work. The only way to survive and thrive in this reality is to do the kind of work that AI and automation can't replicate, learning hard, valuable skills quickly, producing high-quality work at an elite level. And guess what? Both of these things require deep work. Let's say you want to be a top-tier software engineer. You need to master complex programming languages, system architecture, and algorithms, skills that take serious focus and time to develop. If you're constantly distracted, checking your notifications every 5 minutes, you will never reach the top. Or maybe you want to be a best-selling writer. Do you think J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter by tweeting motivational quotes all day? No, she locked herself away in a hotel, disconnected from the world, and went deep. The same principle applies whether you're an entrepreneur, scientist, artist, designer, lawyer, consultant, whatever. If you cannot focus deeply on demanding work, you will always be playing in the minor leagues, making just enough money to get by while the real pros take home the big rewards. Deep work is valuable because it is rare. Most people can't do it anymore. Their brains are so conditioned by distraction that they literally don't have the mental endurance to focus for more than 15 minutes without craving a hit of shallow stimulation. This is your opportunity. If you can train yourself to go deep while everyone else is stuck in shallow, meaningless busy work, you will win. But here's the catch. It's hard. Deep work is uncomfortable. It requires mental discipline. It forces you to cut out the distractions that have hijacked your brain. It's not fun, it's not sexy, but it's the only way to do anything that actually matters. If you want to build something great, if you want to master valuable skills, if you want to be respected, admired, and paid for the work you do, you have no other choice. Deep work or irrelevance, your move. The key takeaway: the ability to focus deeply is the most valuable skill in today's economy. If you don't develop it, you will be left behind. Chapter 2. Deep work is rare. If you thought the last chapter was a wake-up call, buckle up. This one is going to smack you in the face with the cold, brutal truth. Deep work is not only valuable, it's disappearing. Fast. Let's be honest, you don't even remember what real focus feels like anymore. You say you're working, but let's call it what it really is. An uninterrupted sequence of distractions disguised as productivity. You hop from email to email, Slack message to Slack message, and sprinkle in some Twitter, LinkedIn, or TikTok for a break. Every 5 minutes, your phone vibrates with something completely useless, and you jump to check it, because God forbid you miss out on Chad from accounting's latest urgent email. And yet, you still have the audacity to wonder why your work feels shallow, why your creativity is dying, why your career is going absolutely nowhere. Here's the harsh truth. You're not failing because you're not working hard enough. You're failing because you're not working deeply enough. The modern world is not built for deep work. It is actively, aggressively designed to keep you shallow, scattered, and permanently distracted. Your boss, your phone, your coworkers, your entire digital environment, they are all working against you. And the worst part, you let it happen. Most knowledge workers today don't actually work. They just constantly react. They spend their days bouncing between notifications, meetings, and emails, responding to every little ping like a trained dog waiting for a treat. The result? They are stuck in an endless loop of low-value, easily replicable work. The kind of work that keeps you busy but gets you absolutely nowhere. Cal Newport breaks it down with 3 big reasons why deep work is disappearing, and why this makes it your ultimate secret weapon if you can reclaim it. First, let's talk about the rise of open offices and constant connectivity. At some point, some genius, who probably hasn't done an hour of deep work in his entire life, decided that cramming people into open-plan offices with zero privacy was a good idea. Suddenly, workplaces became giant distraction factories where interruptions weren't just frequent, they were expected. Then came instant messaging and things got even worse. Now, not only can people physically interrupt you whenever they want, but they can also digitally infiltrate your focus at any second. You are expected to be always available, always on, always ready to respond in real time, because heaven forbid someone waits an hour for your reply. Productivity, creativity, forget it. Newport points out that this environment is crippling deep work. You cannot produce anything truly valuable when you are constantly being interrupted. And yet, companies continue to glorify busyness instead of actual effectiveness. You've seen it. The guy who is always responding to emails in 5 seconds. He's not a high performer. He's just addicted to being available. The person who books back-to-back meetings all day, they're not working, they're just avoiding real work, which brings us to the second reason deep work is disappearing. Shallow work is easier and people are lazy. Let's face it, deep work is hard. It requires mental discipline. It requires saying no to distractions. It requires long, sustained stretches of effort where you actually push your brain to its limits. Most people would rather do anything but that. It's easier to answer emails than to write a brilliant article. It's easier to sit in a pointless Zoom meeting than to develop a game-changing strategy. It's easier to skim a few news articles than to read a challenging, thought-provoking book. This is why most knowledge workers subconsciously drift towards shallow work. It's comfortable, it feels productive, it doesn't demand much from them. And best of all, it gives them an excuse to avoid doing the real, difficult, high-impact work that actually moves the needle. And then they wonder why their careers are stagnating. The final and perhaps most terrifying reason deep work is disappearing: we are training our brains to be addicted to distraction. Every time you switch tasks, check social media, or get a notification, your brain gets a tiny dopamine hit. It feels good, like a little reward. The more you indulge in this cycle, the more you rewire your brain to crave distractions. At some point, you become incapable of focusing. This is why, when you actually sit down to do something meaningful, like writing, problem solving, or learning, you feel restless, anxious, uncomfortable. Your brain is screaming, "Where's my next hit of dopamine?" And before you know it, you're scrolling through Instagram again. You have literally trained yourself to be incapable of doing deep work. And the consequences of this, they are brutal. Newport makes it crystal clear. The economy does not reward busy work. It does not care how many emails you send. It does not care how many meetings you sit through. It does not care how many hours you grind. The only thing that matters, the quality and impact of what you produce. And deep work is the only way to produce things of real value. Here's the good news. Because deep work is so rare, it is also insanely valuable. While everyone else is trapped in the shallow swamp of distraction, the few people who can still go deep will have a massive advantage. They will be the ones writing bestsellers, launching billion-dollar businesses, creating revolutionary art, leading industries, and making history. That could be you, if you're willing to do what 99% of people won't. The choice is yours. You can keep living like a slave to distractions, stuck in a cycle of meaningless busyness. Or you can take back control, train your brain, and build a life of focus, creativity, and real achievement. One path leads to mediocrity and regret. The other leads to mastery and impact. What's it going to be? The key takeaway: deep work is disappearing because the modern world is designed to keep you shallow and distracted. But that makes deep work your ultimate competitive advantage, if you can reclaim it. Chapter 3: Deep work is meaningful. If you're still here, congratulations. You're clearly interested in doing something with your life instead of rotting away in a vortex of shallow, pointless distractions. You've accepted that deep work is valuable and that most people are too weak to do it. Now, let's hit you with something even more painful. Your life feels empty, frustrating, and unfulfilling. Not because you aren't grateful enough, not because you haven't found the right meditation app, and not because you need to journal your intentions every morning. It's because you don't do deep work. You wake up, you check your phone, you respond to messages, you click through notifications, and before you even start your actual work, your brain is already fried. Then you spend your day playing email ping pong, sitting through useless Zoom calls, and pretending to be productive while producing absolutely nothing of consequence. And then, because you've been busy all day, you convince yourself you deserve some mindless Netflix time, where you stare at a screen while simultaneously scrolling through your phone, drowning in an endless sea of digital noise. Then you go to bed, empty, dissatisfied, restless. You wonder why your work doesn't feel important. You wonder why you always feel like you're missing something. You wonder why, despite being constantly stimulated, you feel bored out of your mind. Here's why. Your brain is starving for meaning, and meaning doesn't come from being busy, it comes from depth. Cal Newport dismantles the biggest lie of modern work culture. The idea that hustling, grinding, and keeping up with a million little things will make you feel accomplished. It won't. It will make you feel like an overworked hamster spinning on a wheel, going nowhere. If you want a life that feels worth living, you need to do deep, meaningful work. The kind of work that challenges you, demands your full attention, and actually leaves an impact on the world. Newport backs this up with science. He introduces the neurological connection between deep work and meaning, showing that when you engage in long periods of deep focus, your brain actually releases more myelin, a substance that strengthens neural pathways and makes you mentally sharper over time. Translation? Deep work makes you smarter, more creative, and more capable. But let's take it further. Deep work doesn't just make you better at your job, it makes you feel more alive. Newport draws from the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist behind the concept of flow, that state of total immersion where time melts away and you feel completely engaged in what you're doing. Csikszentmihalyi studied people across all kinds of fields, artists, athletes, musicians, scientists, and found that the most deeply satisfied, fulfilled people were the ones who regularly experienced flow. And guess what? Flow only happens when you work deeply. You don't enter flow by checking notifications. You don't enter flow by answering emails. You don't enter flow by hopping between 10 different shallow tasks. You enter flow when you go all in on something that actually demands your full cognitive ability. Think about the last time you got fully absorbed in something challenging. Maybe you were coding, writing, designing, strategizing, something that pulled you in so completely that hours flew by without you even noticing. That feeling, that's what you're missing, and that's why your shallow, fragmented work feels meaningless. Newport also rips apart another toxic myth, the idea that meaning comes from finding the perfect job, the perfect calling, the perfect passion. No meaning isn't found, it's created. And it's created by how you work, not where you work. Take two people in the same profession. One spends their day bouncing between distractions, barely scratching the surface of their potential. The other goes deep, crafting, refining, pushing their skills to the limit. Who do you think is going to feel more satisfied at the end of the day? It doesn't matter whether you're an artist, a scientist, an entrepreneur, or an accountant. If you approach your work with depth, you will find meaning in it. Newport brings up craftsmanship as another way to think about this. Imagine a master woodworker, painstakingly carving a piece of furniture, pouring hours of skill and attention into every little detail. Now imagine a guy at IKEA, mass-producing the same cheap, soulless pieces over and over. Who do you think takes more pride in their work? Modern knowledge work has become like the IKEA factory, rushed, cheap, and mass-produced. People take no pride in what they do because they never go deep enough to create something worth being proud of. But when you embrace deep work, your work transforms from a collection of tasks into a craft. You shift from just getting through the day to building something that actually matters. And when you do that, something incredible happens. Your life stops feeling empty. Your mind stops craving constant stimulation. You stop feeling like you're just going through the motions, because now you're actually doing something real. Newport's message is clear. Deep work isn't just a productivity hack, it's the key to a meaningful life. If you don't do deep work, you will always feel like something is missing. You will always feel frustrated. You will always feel like you are not fully tapping into your potential. But if you take the time to master deep work, to train your brain, cut out the distractions, and actually build something of value, you will experience the kind of fulfillment that most people never will. You don't need a new job. You don't need more money. You don't need a different career. You just need to go deeper. Stop treating your work like a checklist of tasks and start treating it like a craft. Stop drowning in shallow distractions and start doing work that actually demands something of you. Stop looking for meaning in external things and start creating it through deep, focused effort. Because in the end, you are what you repeatedly focus on. So if you spend your days lost in shallow work, distractions, and low-value nonsense, what does that say about you? But if you commit to deep work, that's when things start to change. The key takeaway: deep work isn't just about productivity, it's about fulfillment. If you feel like your work or life lacks meaning, it's because you're not going deep enough. Rule 1. Work deeply. You know what's funny? You already know deep work is valuable. You understand that it's rare and that it gives life meaning. You even admit, at least in the dark, honest corners of your mind, that you waste most of your day pretending to be busy instead of actually getting anything important done. And yet, here you are, still distracted, still unfocused, still making excuses. Why? Because you have zero systems in place to actually do deep work. You don't have a structure, a strategy, or the discipline to make it happen. You just hope it'll happen on its own. Let me spell it out for you. It won't. Cal Newport makes it painfully clear in this chapter. Deep work is not something you casually fit into your schedule. It is something you have to actively build your life around. And that, my friend, requires ruthless, brutal, no compromise commitment. You can't just try deep work when you feel inspired. That's amateur hour nonsense. You need to design your life in a way that forces deep work to happen, whether you feel like it or not. Newport introduces 4 different approaches to integrating deep work into your schedule. Let's break them down and see which one you're going to pretend to try before giving up. The first is the monastic approach, which is basically going full Carl Jung, retreating to a quiet, isolated space, cutting off all distractions, and making deep work your entire existence. This is what novelists, hardcore academics, and deep thinkers do. No social media, no email, no unnecessary meetings, just pure uninterrupted focus on their craft. Sound extreme? It is. That's why most people will never do it, because they're addicted to the noise, to the digital chaos, to the illusion that they need to be constantly available. But here's the thing, the people who go monastic, they're the ones writing history. J.K. Rowling locked herself in a hotel for weeks to finish Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Bill Gates takes Think Weeks, where he isolates himself in a cabin, reads, and thinks deeply about the future of technology. These people don't just find time for deep work, they carve their lives around it. Then there's the bimodal approach, which is slightly more realistic for those of you who are too weak to go full monk mode. Here, you dedicate chunks of time, whole days, weeks, or months, to deep work while handling the shallow obligations the rest of the time. Think about it like this. One day you're in deep focus, building something great. The next, you're handling emails, phone calls, and the mindless admin work that society demands from you. The key is that you don't mix the two. This is what professors and researchers do. They spend their summers and sabbaticals doing deep research, then deal with the nonsense of teaching and administration during the academic year. But here's the problem. Most people aren't disciplined enough to make this work. They say they'll block off time for deep work, but when the time comes, they suddenly remember they need to answer emails, check in with the team, or scroll through Twitter for inspiration. Which is why the rhythmic approach exists. This one is about turning deep work into a daily habit. Same time, same place, no excuses. It's the gym membership model for your brain. If you struggle with self-discipline, this is your best bet. Pick a time, every morning, every afternoon, every evening, whatever, and make it non-negotiable. You train your brain to expect deep work at that time, and eventually it becomes automatic. This is how great writers operate. Stephen King writes every single morning, no matter what. He doesn't wait for inspiration, he shows up and does the work. And finally, we have the journalistic approach, which is the hardest of them all. This is for the true deep work assassins, people who can drop into deep focus whenever they get the chance, no matter where they are or what's going on around them. This is insanely difficult because it requires you to rewire your brain to switch into deep work mode instantly. No warm-up, no rituals, just pure ruthless focus on command. Newport warns that most people can't handle this approach. You need to already have a strong ability to focus before even attempting it. So, let's be honest with ourselves. You're probably not ready for this. Now that you know the 4 strategies, let's address the real issue. You don't take deep work seriously enough. Deep work is a war against distraction, and wars require weapons, fortresses, and battle plans. You need rituals and routines to create an environment where deep work isn't just possible, it's unavoidable. Newport suggests 3 non-negotiable elements for setting up your deep work ritual. 1. A specific location. If you don't have a place dedicated to deep work, you're setting yourself up to fail. It could be a home office, a library, a cafe, whatever. But when you step into that space, you do nothing but deep work. 2. A strict set of rules. No phone, no email, no social media, no distractions. If you allow even one shallow task to creep in, you contaminate the entire session. 3. A way to measure success. Track your deep work. Set clear goals. How many pages written? How many lines of code? How much research completed? If you don't track your deep work, you'll end up lying to yourself about how productive you really are. Still with me? Good, because now we need to talk about willpower. Here's the brutal truth. You don't have as much willpower as you think. Willpower is finite. The more decisions you make throughout the day, the weaker your ability to resist distraction becomes. This is why Newport rips apart the ridiculous idea that you can just fight the urge to check your phone. You can't, which means you need structures in place to eliminate the need for willpower entirely. If your phone is out of reach, you don't have to resist checking it. If you physically block distracting websites, you don't have to be strong. The key isn't to be better. The key is to design an environment where distractions physically cannot happen. Newport also highlights the importance of shutdown rituals, a way to end your workday completely so your brain doesn't keep nagging you about unfinished tasks. If you don't shut down properly, your mind stays in work mode and you'll never feel truly rested. This isn't just about working deeply, it's about living deeply. You can't be fully present in your personal life if your brain is still processing half-finished tasks from work. And if you're not present, guess what? Your relationships, your health, your happiness, all of it suffers. If you don't control your work will control you. And that is why you must work deeply, not just because it's more productive, but because it's the only way to actually live. The key takeaway: deep work won't happen by accident. You need a system, a ritual, and an environment that forces it to happen. Otherwise, you'll never escape the shallow life. Rule 2. Embrace boredom. You are addicted to distraction. No, seriously. You are a full-blown junkie. Your brain is so fried by constant stimulation that you can't even stand in line at a coffee shop without whipping out your phone to check something completely meaningless. You can't sit in silence for 2 minutes without feeling the itch to scroll, swipe, or tap your way into oblivion. And then, this is the truly hilarious part, you wonder why you can't focus. You wonder why deep work feels impossible. You wonder why your brain is so weak, so easily fatigued, so incapable of handling real intellectual effort. Let me make this painfully clear. You are mentally out of shape. You have spent years training your brain to avoid even the slightest moment of boredom. Every single time you feel the tiniest dip in stimulation, you reflexively reach for your phone, open a new tab, refresh your notifications, or seek some other mind-numbing distraction. And now your brain sucks at focusing. Cal Newport does not sugarcoat this reality. Your ability to focus is a muscle, and just like any other muscle, if you don't use it, it atrophies. If you constantly give in to the temptation of shallow distractions, you are literally rewiring your brain to be incapable of deep work. And here's where it gets even worse. You tell yourself that you'll focus when it matters, that when it's time to sit down and work, you'll just flip the switch and suddenly be able to concentrate. Wrong. That's not how brains work. You don't build mental endurance in the moment. You build it in every moment before the moment. If you spend your entire day training your brain to crave novelty, you don't just turn that off when you sit down to do deep work. Your brain is like, nope, I need my dopamine fix. Check Twitter. Open a new tab. Stimulation. Now. So, what's the solution? You must train yourself to tolerate boredom. You must recondition your brain to stop demanding constant stimulation. You must learn how to sit in silence, how to resist the urge to check your phone, how to endure moments of emptiness without reaching for the nearest distraction. Newport's advice: stop treating boredom like a problem. Start treating it like a training opportunity. Every single time you resist the urge to check your phone during a dull moment, you are strengthening your focus muscle. Every time you sit in silence, instead of reaching for mindless entertainment, you are rewiring your brain for depth. This is the exact opposite of how most people behave. Most people spend every idle moment feeding their addiction to distraction, checking social media, bouncing between tabs, filling every empty space with garbage information. Then they wonder why they can't focus. Newport introduces several brutal but necessary exercises to break this addiction. First, he tells you to schedule your distractions. Yes, you heard that right. If you want to break free from your addiction to shallow work, you don't just randomly try to check your phone less. That doesn't work. Instead, you set specific times during the day when you are allowed to check email, social media, or whatever other nonsense usually hijacks your brain. Anytime outside of those scheduled moments, you don't check. No exceptions. At first, this will feel impossible. Your brain will scream for its hit of digital dopamine. But if you stick with it, you will notice something incredible. Your cravings for constant stimulation start to weaken. Your ability to focus starts to grow. Another brutal but effective exercise: do nothing. Next time you're waiting in line, riding an elevator, or sitting alone with no immediate task, do absolutely nothing. No phone, no distractions. Just sit there. Let your mind wander. Let yourself be bored. This will feel painful at first. Your brain will rebel. But that's the whole point, because when you train yourself to handle boredom, you train yourself to handle deep work. And then there's the nuclear option: hard focus training. If you really want to rewire your brain for deep work, you need to force yourself into uncomfortably long sessions of deep concentration. Newport suggests setting a timer for a difficult task and forcing yourself to focus for a set amount of time without any distractions. At first, you'll probably fail. Your brain will be too weak to handle it. But the more you train, the stronger you get. Think of it like lifting weights. If you've been mentally bench pressing 2-pound distractions all day, of course you're going to collapse when it's time to lift a heavy intellectual challenge. So, start training. And understand this: if you don't actively work on improving your ability to focus, it will continue to get worse. The modern world is designed to destroy your ability to concentrate. It is engineered to make you a shallow, distracted, mentally weak consumer, one who spends more time watching other people create things than creating anything of value yourself. The only way to escape this trap: fight back. If you want to reclaim your mind, if you want to become the kind of person who actually does something meaningful, you have to train your focus like an athlete trains their body. Stop making excuses. Stop giving in to every little distraction. Stop treating your attention like a garbage dump for whatever nonsense the internet throws at you. Learn to embrace boredom. Learn to sit in silence. Learn to control your own mind instead of letting the world control it for you. Because if you don't, you will never be able to do deep work. And if you can't do deep work, you will never do anything great. The key takeaway: your ability to focus is a muscle. If you constantly give in to distractions, you weaken it. If you train yourself to tolerate boredom, you strengthen it. Your choice. Rule 3: quit social media. Here it comes. The chapter that's going to make you squirm in your seat and frantically search for excuses. Because deep down, you know the truth. Social media is ruining your brain. You tell yourself it's useful. You tell yourself it's important for networking. You tell yourself you need it to stay informed. But let's be brutally honest. You are addicted to cheap dopamine hits from scrolling, clicking, and endlessly consuming content that does absolutely nothing to improve your life. You don't use social media. Social media uses you. Cal Newport does not hold back in this chapter, and neither will I. If you care about doing meaningful, high-impact work, you need to stop pretending that Twitter threads, Instagram stories, and TikTok doom scrolling are in any way helping you. They are distractions, plain and simple, and until you cut them out, you will never be able to focus deeply enough to do anything that actually matters. The argument is simple. If something is actively destroying your ability to concentrate, it needs to go. Social media fragments your attention into tiny, useless pieces. Every notification, every swipe, every click is a small cognitive interruption, and these add up. You might think, oh, checking Twitter for 30 seconds won't hurt. But you're wrong. Every time you switch context from real work to social media, you degrade your brain's ability to maintain deep focus. Imagine a professional athlete trying to train while stopping every 5 minutes to check their phone. That's you. except instead of training your body, you're trying to train your mind and failing miserably. Newport lays out the two biggest lies people tell themselves about why they need social media. Lie number one: social media is necessary for my career. No, it's not. Newport shows example after example of highly successful professionals who have zero social media presence. Writers, entrepreneurs, scientists, programmers, people who are absolutely crushing it without wasting their time on social platforms. You know why? Because they're too busy doing real work. They don't have time to argue with strangers online, post performative updates, or obsess over engagement metrics that don't translate into actual success. But I need social media for networking. Do you? Or are you just afraid of doing the hard work of real networking, which involves building deep, meaningful relationships instead of collecting a bunch of digital acquaintances who wouldn't notice if you disappeared? Lie number two: social media helps me stay informed. Sure, if by informed you mean distracted, overwhelmed, and emotionally manipulated by algorithmically optimized outrage. Newport makes it painfully clear: if something is important enough, you will find out about it without needing to check Twitter 20 times a day. The constant flood of outrage, gossip, and low-quality information does not make you smarter. It makes you reactive, anxious, and unfocused. And worst of all, it gives you the illusion of productivity. You scroll through LinkedIn, telling yourself you're staying up to date with industry trends. You watch YouTube videos on success habits, convincing yourself you're learning. But the truth is, you're consuming instead of creating. You're being entertained instead of actually doing the work that moves your life forward. So how do you escape? Newport introduces the craftsman approach to tool selection, a brutal but effective way to decide which technologies are actually worth your time. It's simple. Instead of using social media just because everyone else is, you must justify its presence in your life by asking, does this tool significantly support the things I deeply value? Or is it just a distraction? If a tool does not directly contribute to your professional success or personal fulfillment, it needs to go. Period. You don't keep a hammer in your kitchen just in case you need to build something. You don't carry around an industrial drill just in case you need to fix something. You use the right tool for the right job, nothing more. Social media is not a tool you need. It is a slot machine for your attention, designed to keep you hooked, distracted, and mentally weak. Newport challenges you to take a 30-day break from social media. No excuses, no cheating, just delete the apps and see what happens. At first, you'll go through withdrawal. You'll reach for your phone out of habit. You'll feel anxious, like you're missing out. But then something incredible will happen. Your brain will start working again. You'll notice that you can sit with your thoughts, that your focus improves, that your mind starts craving real challenges instead of cheap entertainment. And most importantly, you'll realize that you never actually needed social media in the first place. You just thought you did because you were addicted. This is not an easy rule to accept. Most people will rationalize their addiction and refuse to take this step. They'll say, but my business, but my personal brand, but my connections. Fine, stay stuck. Keep being distracted. Keep watching people who actually do deep work pass you by while you waste your time consuming low-value nonsense. But if you're serious about getting your focus back, if you actually want to be one of the rare people who can produce meaningful, high-quality work, then you need to make a decision. Do you want to be entertained, or do you want to be excellent? You can't have both. The key takeaway: social media is not a harmless distraction. It is actively destroying your ability to focus. If you want to do deep work, you need to quit, or at the very least, radically reduce your usage. Rule 4, drain the shallows. You're wasting most of your life. That's not an exaggeration. It's not even an insult. It's just cold, brutal reality. If you're like most people, your workday is a mess of shallow, meaningless nonsense. You spend hours answering emails, hopping on calls that accomplish nothing, and sitting through meetings that should have been a 2-sentence memo. And the worst part? You actually think this counts as work. Cal Newport is here to tell you otherwise. If you ever want to do deep work, if you ever want to actually build something that matters, you need to stop drowning in shallow tasks. You need to drain the shallows and reclaim your time for work that actually moves the needle. Let's define the problem. What is shallow work? Newport describes it as non-cognitively demanding, logistical style work, often performed while distracted. Translation: stuff that makes you feel busy but doesn't actually require serious brain power. Shallow work is answering emails all day like an unpaid customer support agent, sitting in endless Zoom meetings where nothing gets decided, checking Slack every 5 minutes like a digital hamster on a wheel, clicking through a million browser tabs while getting nothing done. And here's the truth. Most people's jobs are 80 to 90% shallow work. Think about it. If someone followed you around for a week with a stopwatch, tracking the time you actually spent doing high-value, deep, concentrated work, what would they find? 2 hours a day? 1 hour? 30 minutes? Be honest with yourself. You're filling your day with nonsense and calling it productivity. Newport breaks down exactly why this happens. First, modern work culture rewards looking busy more than being effective. You know what I mean? The guy who fires off emails at midnight looks like a hard worker. The woman who always says, "let's schedule a call," seems engaged. The employee who sits in meetings all day appears dedicated. But here's the catch. None of this actually produces results. Meanwhile, the person who blocks out 3 hours to do deep, focused work and actually build something meaningful, they get the same amount done in a day that most people do in a week, but because they don't look like they're constantly scrambling, they often go unnoticed. Newport makes it clear, if you want to get serious about deep work, you need to ruthlessly eliminate as much shallow work as possible, and here's how you do it. First, time block your entire day. You can't just hope you'll get deep work done. That's amateur thinking. You need to plan every hour of your day in advance, and yes, that includes time for shallow tasks. Newport recommends setting specific blocks of time for checking email, attending meetings, and handling logistical work. Outside of those blocks, you don't touch them. For example, 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., deep work on project, no interruptions. 10:30 a.m. to 11 a.m., batch process all emails. 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., more deep work. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., meetings or admin work. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., more deep work. When you structure your day like this, two things happen. 1, you dramatically increase the amount of deep work you do. 2, you stop shallow work from taking over your entire day. Because guess what? If you don't schedule deep work, the shallow stuff will expand and fill every available moment like a gas leak. Next, say no to more things. Most people are terrified of saying no. They accept every pointless meeting, every unnecessary task, every dumb request because they don't want to seem unhelpful. Newsflash, you're not being helpful. You're just making yourself less effective. Newport argues that if a meeting, project, or request does not contribute directly to your most important work, you should eliminate it or minimize your involvement. How? Try these strategies. Decline unnecessary meetings. If someone invites you to a vague, open-ended call, ask, "What's the agenda?" If there isn't one, skip it. Push back on vague requests. When someone says, "Can you help me with this?" don't just say yes. Ask for specifics. Most of the time, you'll realize it's not worth your time. Automate, delegate, or batch low-value tasks. Stop wasting your brain power on things that could be handled by someone else, or done in one focused batch instead of 15 random interruptions. And if you're worried about saying no, just remember, the most successful people in the world say no more than they say yes. Steve Jobs was ruthless about this. He knew that focusing on a few important things was the key to excellence. He once said, "Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things." But you say yes to everything and then wonder why you never have time for deep work. Finally, set hard limits on your work hours. This one might shock you, but Newport recommends fixing a strict end time for your workday and actually sticking to it. No staying late, no answering emails at night, no checking Slack at 10 p.m., just in case. Why? Because forcing yourself to finish your work by a set time makes you more efficient. Think about it. When you know you have infinite time, you waste hours on nonsense. But when you must finish by 5:30 p.m., you suddenly become a productivity machine. This is called Parkinson's law. work expands to fill the time available. If you give yourself all day, shallow work will creep in and steal your time. But if you set strict limits, you'll be forced to cut out the nonsense and focus on what really matters. And let's be real, you don't need to be working 12-hour days. You just need to stop wasting time on shallow garbage and actually do deep work. So what's your excuse now? You know you waste your time on emails, meetings, and distractions. You know deep work is what really matters. You know the only way to fix this is to ruthlessly cut the shallow nonsense from your life. Are you actually going to do it? Or are you going to keep pretending that clicking around your inbox for 8 hours counts as working hard? You're cool. The key takeaway: most of your day is filled with shallow, meaningless tasks. If you don't aggressively eliminate or contain them, they will consume your entire life, leaving no room for deep work. Conclusion: you have no excuse left. You made it. You listened to the whole thing. You nodded along. You felt the occasional surge of motivation. Maybe you even made a few notes about how you're going to change your life starting Monday. But let's be real for a second. Are you actually going to do anything? Or are you going to close this summary, open TikTok, check your emails, and go right back to the shallow, distracted mess that you call work? Cal Newport has just handed you a roadmap to success, a step-by-step guide to escaping the cycle of mindless, low-value busyness and reclaiming your ability to focus. If you follow this plan, you will become unstoppable. And yet, most people won't do it. Most people will keep pretending that shallow work is unavoidable. Most people will keep drowning in useless meetings, endless emails, and mind-numbing distractions. Most people will keep making excuses about why they can't quit social media, why they have to stay available 24/7, why they don't have time for deep work, and those people, they will be left behind. If you've been paying attention, you already know the truth. Deep work is not optional. It is the difference between being average and being great. Deep work is what separates the professionals from the amateurs. Deep work is what turns ideas into businesses, thoughts into books, and skills into mastery. Deep work is what allows people to rise above the noise in a world that is actively trying to keep them distracted. So, let's break it down one last time. If you want to do something that actually matters, here's what you need to do. 1. Work deeply. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop easing into it. Create a system that forces you to focus, build rituals, and show up like a professional. If you don't structure your workday around deep work, shallow distractions will take over. 2. Embrace boredom. You have trained your brain to be a dopamine addict. Break the cycle. Learn to sit in silence. Resist the urge to reach for your phone. Strengthen your ability to focus by rewiring your brain for depth instead of cheap stimulation. 3. Quit social media. You are wasting your life scrolling through nonsense. You tell yourself you need it, but you don't. Cut it out, or at least severely limit it, and watch your productivity skyrocket. 4. Drain the shallows. Your workday is filled with unnecessary distractions. Cut out useless meetings, batch process emails, say no to meaningless requests. If a task doesn't contribute to your most important work, either eliminate it or contain it. It all comes down to one brutal question. Do you actually want to be great, or do you just like the idea of being great? Because the people who are truly great, the ones who build billion-dollar companies, write bestsellers, create groundbreaking ideas, they don't work like you. They don't fill their days with shallow nonsense. They don't let themselves get distracted every 5 minutes. They don't waste hours refreshing notifications. They go deep, and if you're not willing to do the same, then stop pretending you want success, because here's the reality. If you don't make deep work a priority, you will never achieve anything truly meaningful. You will remain stuck in the cycle of shallow work, jumping from one low-value task to another, never producing anything of real significance. That's your future, unless you do something about it. But if you take this seriously, if you actually commit to deep work, cut the distractions, and train your mind to focus, then nothing can stop you. You will become the kind of person whose work is so rare and so valuable that the world cannot ignore you. The choice is yours. Are you going to keep making excuses, or are you finally going to take control of your mind, your work, and your future? because nobody is coming to save you from your own distractions. You either fix this or you stay stuck. Decide.